Teresa, thank you so much for joining me. A couple of weeks back, I asked you if you would speak to me about what has been a completely prolific career, incredible from start to finish across multiple platforms. And your leadership journey has been quite incredible because it started in the 80s when, let's call a spade, there wasn't as many women in leadership as there are today. And for all purposes, we want people to feel inspired, to hear your story and your journey from your humble beginnings to how you finished up. So, without further ado, thank you so much for joining me.
I'm so glad to be here.
Good, good. So, my first question for you is back in the early days of your career, like what really stands out to you as that pivotal moment where you learned, okay, this is the start and I belong here?
The start. Well, I would say, sorry, I'm pausing. That
It's
one threw
okay.
me a little
We
bit.
would be cutting
You're
it
going to
anyway.
be able to cut this stuff, right?
Yeah, of
Okay,
course, of
good,
course.
good. So the question was,
When
what's
you
the
look,
question again?
I'll ask you the question. So, when you look back on your earlier years of your career, is there a moment that stands out as one that shaped how you led from that day forward?
I would have to say there's many of those moments
Mm.
as you grow through a long career, but when I think back in the beginning, I think it has to be to do with really an appreciation for doing hard work,
Mhm.
learning, persevering, and just doing the work. I mean, oftentimes we think, getting things right doesn't come easily. It doesn't come without learning and studying and the late nights and things like that to learn a new business or to learn an area that you're in. And I think that work ethic that was frankly passed down to me generationally from my parents was always really strong. I was always a good worker, and I don't think I really knew what that was like until you got into your career. And you think you
Mhm.
work really hard in school, you think college is, oh my gosh, that's amazing. But you get into the work world, and the amount of learning, the amount of diligence around what you're doing, and to keep up and do your job well, it really takes some focus and some long hours.
Okay, and was there a specific leader at the beginning of your career, Teresa, that you thought, wow, they do a great job. I'm going to take some of those skills and I'm going to use them for myself?
Yeah, there were probably some leaders that it was the opposite. Like, that's not how I want to be. That's not how I want to talk to people. That's not who I want to be. In some cases, in the beginning, you're not always working for the most talented leaders, right? They're not that much further along than you are. And I hate to start with the negative, but sometimes you learn just as much from a leader that is not like how you want to be. And then you would get these leaders sometimes later in your career that were like amazing. They were visionaries, that they understood how to communicate to people. They had messaging, they had integrity about how they approached the work, and they just treated people well. They knew, when you were putting in some long hours and say, "Hey, Teresa, why don't you get out of here tonight? You've been working 10 hours a day for the last 3 or 4 days. Get out and enjoy your weekend." I mean, people that thought about you personally and took care of you as an employee really resonated on how I wanted to be as a leader down the
Okay.
road.
So that still applies today, Teresa. Beginning of your journey was in the 80s, and actually more than ever now with AI post-pandemic, it is still about the people, it is still about integrity, and it is still about taking care of your people and recognizing them for an individual, not just as that working person within the company. So you learn from other people's mistakes, is what I'm hearing. You've seen and learned from the visionaries. You began to learn how you wanted to lead. So that time, leadership looked very different. There might have been a lot of table banging and things like that. So, what gave you the confidence to trust your voice and the way you wanted to lead?
Yeah, I think that some of that comes from some of who you are from early childhood and how you're raised. That, I like people. Um, it's not a popularity contest, but treating people with dignity and respect always was just, how I grew up and how I learned to be the person that I am. So those things were sort of always there. And I think as my career developed, how to do that better and how to manage, the stresses and the deadlines and the politics and all the other challenging parts in your career, all the other parts in your career, sorry about that, Claire, all the other parts in your career, um, let me restart that.
It's okay.
I thought I had all these phones off.
So, what gave you the confidence to trust your leadership style?
I think it was a little bit less about trusting, except it was more about who I am, right? And who I learned to be from a young girl as I, continue to grow up. It's cultural. I'm Irish. I come from hardworking Irish parents and um, a mom and dad that treated people with respect and were good people to be around. And that's, what they instilled on us. So for me, it was the only way. I think the challenge becomes when you mentioned that I started in the 80s and at a company that was predominantly all men. Men have a different style of leadership. And I think what I had to sort of learn the hard way is I didn't need to lead like that. If
Hmm.
young and you're out of college and you're starting off in the first time, the people that you were around and who were your bosses and who were the leaders in the company were all of a certain type of person and oftentimes a very similar style of leadership person. And I could be that or I could be something different. It took a while to learn to be something different,
Did
frankly.
it take courage to be authentic? Because it sounds like you're telling me you had to be authentic at a time when there was an expectation of a certain behavior as a leader, and you chose to be different.
I did eventually. I don't think that comes right away because you realize this is not who I am, and nor is it how I want to be. So when you're young, you're emulating somebody else's style, and if you don't have a lot of diverse styles around you, you become the style of the person. Now, there were certainly times where I knew to draw the line. They were very black and white, and well, that's not how I'm going to be. But it's that nuance of how you come into the office, how you may allow the deadlines of the day to take over the mood of the office, those kinds of things. You didn't need to be like that.
Hmm.
We
So,
can
what would you have done, Teresa, to make sure that the mood of the office was always productive but pleasant, not that testy, irritated, high stress office? Because we know it's in corporate America for sure.
Yeah, I think that is just all about getting to know people, getting them to know you. And that would be a stop by a desk in the morning. Good morning. How was your weekend? How is, Johnny doing? Knowing your people, knowing how, asking them about their lives, relaxing the environment. And then, now it's time to get to work. But don't make it all about
The
uh,
work.
the minute you come into the office or to the environment, the operation, wherever you are, take some time to get to know people
Mm.
and say hello and how was your weekend. Those are the things that I think help people during the stressful times remember that you're human and that they're human and we have a relationship that we want to build. It's very important.
Okay, so hard work, learning from the failures of maybe failures or styles of people you didn't want to emulate, learning how your authentic voice brought change and brought a difference, and then relationships. So that's what I've heard so far. Now, was there ever a moment when you doubted your path of being the authentic leader that you wanted to be? And if you did, what helped you to find your footing again?
Yeah, I think there were different times during different parts of my career. It's almost like you would go in and out of it. You would
Mm.
be confident in your authentic self, and then all of a sudden you were questioning it, or you were going back into some, some practices that you were trying to work yourself to be better at, right? So,
Mhm.
if I and a lot of times that came with the next level of the job, right? So
Yeah.
the next level of the job, more pressure, more expectation, more excitement, but those are the times where perhaps I would step back and lose that a little bit. And
Hmm.
I'm accountable to that, right? I didn't have to lose it. I didn't have to lose my strength around my own authenticity. Um, and so working at that and knowing what that is important. But when the pressures get on, this is where you can change. And again, the game is heavier. You're going up in your career, and the people around you also have a different dynamic. The politics
Okay.
are more important, and you can't let that some of those things change who you are. You got to get back to saying hello to the people, getting out on the floor, um, asking somebody about their weekend before you dive right into the intense discussion of the day. I think it's a lifelong learning. To stay authentic is not 100% of the time through your career is not, I don't think, realistic unless
Hmm.
you're really focused on it. At least I needed to be focused on it. I needed to make sure that I was being true to myself and leading in the way and the manner that I felt was best for the team.
Okay. So you've talked about lots of the journey. You've talked about things that you learned along the way. I'm going to ask you, did you ever have a formal or informal coach or mentor through those decades that really showed you how to level up to the next leadership role?
I did. And I would just say right off the bat, Claire, that if anybody gets the opportunity to have a coach, they should take it. They should take it with honor and really a compliment, because at least in the world that I came up in, coaching was given to those that we thought we wanted to develop, right? And sometimes people say, well, we want to get you a coach, and it's such a negative thing. Oh, what's
Yeah.
wrong with me? Oh, you want to fix me?
Mm.
Frankly, that's the way I thought. I was kind of a bit, scaried about it. And I learned that it was one, it was an investment in me. It
Hmm.
was the right investment at the right time. I was more senior in my career, and it was one of the best experiences. I have had, great mentors over the years, people that I latched onto and I chose. But to have somebody come in with the professional ability who's worked with lots of executives to give you that extra input, who doesn't know you, who doesn't, have any stake in the game except to help you find yourself and to move forward. That was one of the best
Brilliant.
experiences.
Okay, so
And
pushing
by
you,
the way, back to the authentic self, it helped me come back again to my authentic self
yeah.
and to also realize um, some of that authenticity and how I led, I couldn't talk to everybody anymore. So everything that I did had just it would be exaggerated, right? If
Hmm.
you're kind of, you've got thousands of people that report up to you, you don't really have too many chances to get it right. And I was just always thinking, well, they'll get to know me. They'll just get to know who I am. At
Hmm.
this stage of the game, they don't get to know who you are. You can't go out and have dinner with every single employee. So you have to be really mindful of those communications that you say in front of the large group, or how you are coming into a meeting room and things like that. You don't get to have people forgive you your faults. You
Yes.
need to keep those faults in check. And it was one
Hmm.
of the bigger learnings that I had during that time, because it was be authentic, but yes, you can't get it done the way you used to, Teresa. You've got to do it in a different way, and that was really valuable to me.
Okay, so now you've moved into the realm of, well, coaching's smart because it's the people you want to develop, and that's a great mindset. Also, communication. So you've talked about relationships in the smaller roles. Now you've moved into leader of thousands. So there are thousands of people waiting for your directive, your style of communication, and you don't get to speak to them one on one. So tell me, Teresa, what was the leadership role that you absolutely loved and why?
Um, Gosh, I think one of my favorite roles was the CFO of our international business at UPS at the time. I think there were a couple things. This is one of those jobs where I had a really great boss, probably one of my favorite bosses. And I'll tell you a little bit about that because he was a kind of manager that turned over the keys of the kingdom. He said, Teresa, you just take care of this for me. You screw it up, I'll pull back some of your power. But he would just let you go and support you and was a visionary, had great communication, vision communication through his global operations. So that was one. But the other thing was the diversity now of my role, of the challenges, of the global cultures, and operating and managing in a global world,
Hmm.
being in Asia, being in Europe, being in Mexico, and it just it sort of opened my eyes to a different world and a different, and also using all those skills again to recognize, the cultural aspects and how people lead and how culture can change how people lead and come to the table. And you need to understand that and be sensitive to that. So
Yeah.
for me, that was my favorite job. I
Wow.
ever, and it was just one of those things that all things were clicking. It was
Hmm.
also one of the most complicated times in my life. My son was small. I was traveling all over the world. That was, a difficult time in life balancing. So at
Yes.
the same time that I have this great job that I, loved the most was also at home. One of the most challenging times to stay connected to my young man.
And that was my next question, Teresa. How did you navigate that? Because I work with a huge amount of high performing women. They are leaders, they travel, and yet their standards in high performance at work also transfer to their home life, where they want to be the best possible mother to their children, the best possible partner if they have one. So, how did you navigate that? And do you have any advice for leaders who travel a lot but who want to keep a strong connection with their family?
Yeah, I think there are so many little tricks around that I learned. Yeah, and also I would just say as a foreground, I didn't that's where my mentorship was very few. There were very few women that were at the level of the game that I was achieving towards that had children. There were women,
Hmm.
but they did not have children, or they had a spouse that was the predominant person at home. I
Hmm.
happened to be married a guy that was on the road as much as I did. So
Hmm.
we were really crazy, right? So I do have a lot of conversations in small groups with a lot of women. I used to talk to consultants a lot about life balance because that is their role, traveling a lot as women. But at the end of the day, I had to learn to give up things that I thought I liked to do. My mother was a great cook. She liked to have great dinner parties, and I wanted to do all that. And I would, kind of, I realized I wasn't seeing my friends because I couldn't do things like that. So a few of my friends were also career women. And so, we're just going to have paper plates and pizza and we're getting
Yeah.
to, right?
And
I
that's really
learned
important, Teresa, that lowering of standards everywhere, that expectation of yourself. And when you spoke to those women, I'm sure it was a relief for them to hear, well, here's a woman who is nailing it professionally, has a good relationship with her family, but the extra add-ons like the family legacy of having very fancy dinner parties just didn't happen as much.
You make a lot of those trade-offs and you're happy to do it. I think with my son when he was a little guy and I would be gone to Asia for a week and I would come back, the first thing I did was get into school and read the book or, do the parents thing of the week, whatever that was, because he only needed one reminder that I was just like every other mom. And that
Hmm.
was coming into school and doing that thing. And otherwise, he wasn't a big get on the phone and talk a lot kind of guy. Back then it was just some of the Zoom wasn't in existence, but some of those things were starting out, and we would do those kinds of things. But I think the most important part of it for both my husband and I is that when we were back home or we were together, we were present.
Hmm.
It's none of this, with the
Yeah.
phones on the side. They know when you're at the baseball game, if you're on the cell phone or if you're really watching them. And, we just had to focus on being present. Uh,
Okay. I think that's a huge,
huge.
huge piece of advice. Because I even hear my own kids say it to me, Mom, do you need the phone, or is that social media? Words that we would have never had when we were young. And you absolutely don't want your children growing up thinking my mom spent most of her time on her phone. So I think that's a really good nugget for anybody who's listening to the interview is that they say that 15 minutes with absolutely uninterrupted attention and focus with your child negates any kind of insecurities or lack of presence for the other part of the week or the day or whatever it is. So that's brilliant. Okay. Teresa, you're a hugely successful woman in so many ways. How do you stay grounded, and how did you stay grounded when you had that role with UPS, where you were in the leader of thousands?
I think it does get back to some of what we were just talking about. It is family. It is, disconnecting a little bit from a world that was really different than your home life, and
Mhm.
being with our son and being with my husband and, just doing simple things with our friends. I think that's what, keeps you there. Um,
Keeps you grounded.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's family, it's friends, it's community, uh,
Yeah.
is outside of your career, that I think is so important in that balance. And it keeps me, who I want to be, which is, in the community with my family, with my friends, and they're not
And,
all, we come from all different backgrounds. So,
and I think as well, what you're touching on there is your pastimes because you're hugely involved in Phoenix Irish Arts, and that in itself is a leadership role, but it seems to tap into your passion. And a lot of women think, perhaps, or leaders in general, especially in their mid 40s, mid 50s, when career is really huge, that they lose a sense of self or, a sense of what I actually like to do. I work with so many women who don't even know what way they like their eggs for breakfast anymore because they're so dedicated to family and to work that they forget about themselves in the meantime. Would you have any words of advice for women who are pushing on to the next level of leadership, how to maintain that presence or passion or pastime?
um, just do it. I mean, I hate to sound like a Nike commercial, but you've got to have those things in your life. Working nonstop, that may get you incrementally there, but it doesn't bring fresh ideas. It doesn't bring fresh perspective because you're not around anything else that you're passionate about and you think
Hmm.
differently about. And I just think you have to find the time to be on nonprofit boards if that's your thing, or to be, a baseball coach, or like me, a dancing coach and a school coach. Um, because I think those things also, that gets back to the grounding, it gets back to the authenticity.
Hmm.
Um,
And also, Teresa, it doesn't need to be in a place of service. I mean, if you like Zumba dancing, go to the Zumba dance class and make the time.
yeah, I have a lady that I work with in my current position, and I know she needs to, she's an Indian, she does Indian dance, and I know she needs to get to that class.
Yeah.
It's a long day, and I've got it now. I kind of know when her class is, and I'm like, hey, are you going to your class? You need to get out and go to your class because it just helps you. One, it's a stress reliever, to do
Hmm.
something different that makes you happy, which dancing and athletics and serving on nonprofit boards, that triggers that happiness thing. You got to just do it. You got to find the time to keep it in your life.
So find the dopamine hit, however, whether it's in service or actually doing an activity, or if you're an extrovert, just generally mixing with people. I would find in my job where I am, I went from meeting about 400 people, 300 or 400 people a day to solely working on my own or meeting one to two people. That was a big transition for me in this role, but it made me extra cognizant of the women I work with is that they need some downtime and they need to stay true to themselves, which is the authenticity you spoke about. Okay, Teresa, if I was to ask you for three pieces of advice for women who aspire to move to the next level of leadership, what are the three main pieces of advice you'd give them? And we'll finish on this. So, what are the three main pieces of advice you'd give to any aspiring woman who wants to lead?
Okay, well, one, I think you have to get results. So this gets into that perseverance and hard work. You've got to get the results. Things don't come your way unless you're really rocking it at the job, at, whatever your passion is. You've got to do good, right?
Hmm.
And I think after that, I would say I might have to go to four, but I would say have good mentors, change them up as your career changes, have different mentors. They don't need to be formal programs, people inside your organization, outside your organization, and know when you need that next person. Mentors, and I would slash the coaching if anybody wants to invest in you by giving you a coaching opportunity, take it. So I guess that's two. I think, three, I think it's always about a people relationship and communication. So think about how you communicate, when you communicate. If you can get the communication right, you can get the relationships right. And in business, I think that is terribly important in your career, to understand that. And it's a lifelong process in my mind, lifelong learning, to be the best communicator you can in every varying types of situation. And
Okay, that's
that's
three. You have a bonus, which people are lucky to hear. What is the bonus?
I think the other thing we didn't touch on is surround yourself by people that have skills that you don't have skills. Don't surround yourself with people that think like you and have the same skills as you. Bring in people to be on your team that shore up your shortcomings. Maybe that is communication, by the way. Shore that up, right?
Hmm.
Because I think if you can look at team building in a way that creates the best team, it's all about bringing in skills that complement each other or skills that complement who you are. And I think that to me is one of those things that I still today, I still think about on even in our nonprofit world. How do you do that to make the whole organization or the whole team perform and be happy?
Okay, my God, that's absolutely brilliant. So, four really solid pieces of advice there. It's perseverance to get the results. Things don't happen easily. The second one is a coach, a mentor inside the building, outside the building. If your company is willing to invest in you, or if you don't get offered it, ask for it. Number three is communication and relationships. It is still the most outstanding problem in most companies around the world is communication and relationship building because people don't afford it the time. And then the last one is that you said that no matter what, you have to finish it for me, Teresa.
Surround yourself with people that have skills and think differently than you do.
And the thought that it triggered there for me was when using a psychometric, if everybody in the room is an ISFJ or a red disc or whatever, that doesn't make for a good team. Variety is the spice of life. And they also say that if you sit within 25 feet of a high performer, high achiever, your own performance improves by 15%. So never be the most clever person in the room. Teresa, thank you so much. That was absolutely fantastic. I hope everybody got some nuggets from it, from a guru of leadership across 4, 5 decades, is it?
I'm not that old. Yeah.
Yeah, but you started young, is what I'm saying.
I
Okay,
did.
all right. Teresa, thank you so very much for your time, and I'll chat to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Claire.